if you are in a position to maybe have your notepad, you can always try out these particular options as we proceed. So as I'd mentioned, the CSS allows us to come up with the layout of a particular web page. So normally if you see a website that has some kind of nicely arranged layout, that is because of the cascading style sheet. So we are going to say maybe what is cascading style sheet. There are different number of style sheets that we need to really understand, right? So as you can see, this CSS allows or determines how the elements in our documents are displayed and formatted. That's what we refer to as the layout, right? So if you have a firm grip or understanding of how HTML or XHTML elements work, then you should be in a position to integrate your XHTML web page with this kind of CSS, right? So we're going to look at the CSS version 3, or if you have CSS version 4, 5, 6, all those are compatible, right? What we are going to do is not to use the old versions of CSS. So we have three categories or three ways that you can use CSS, right? So number one is the inline option. Yeah. Now inline is not really preferred to use because of some of the reasons that you are going to actually look at, but it is normally placed directly within the HTML elements that you have seen. For instance, if you have a paragraph, you can have a specific inline style within the paragraph. So that means it's only that particular paragraph that is going to be affected. And then you have the internal style sheet. So this one allows us to maybe have one standard formatting styles that is going to be replicated, right, across the various pages within our website, right? So this is also maybe one of the style sheets that you are going to be frequently using, but the common one is the external style sheet where you link, right? This is a preferred actually, yeah. So if you happen to make changes within this external style sheet, you are assured that every part of your website that uses a particular style sheet is going to be affected. So this is a preferred option because you don't really need to go in each and every web page to make those particular changes. So you just need to open your CSS file, make the changes, and automatically it gets replicated to the other web pages. So as you can see, we have the inline style sheet. So I believe now at this particular moment in time we know what elements are, and now to activate a style or an inline style sheet, you need to have the attribute, yeah, together with its value. As you can see, the heading 2 style or heading 2 element, we can expand the element to include the what? The inline style. So the style here allows us to change the color. As you can see, we have the attribute in quotes. I mean, we have the attribute values in quotes, right? So indication of how the inline style works, as you can see, the caution, icy road conditions text is actually in red, yeah. So that's how we can use the inline. It's very, very simple. And you can see at the bottom there's a caution or there's a kind of disclaimer. So since inline styles have limited scope and do not separate content from presentation, their use is generally discouraged. Yeah. So no, specifically, I won't really allow you or prefer you using it in subsequent lessons. So take note of that. So that's how we can always use the inline style. So you can say it just affects the heading 2 style. Now coming to the internal style sheet, you can say how it affects. Now this one is represented within the normally the style sheet, I think I didn't mention that, is normally appended within the heading elements, or the beginning tag of heading and the ending tag of heading, and you must always specify the style, the style element, so that it or the browser understands that this is a particular style sheet. So let's look at maybe the difference between this and the inline one that we looked at. As you can see, now we have this particular heading 2. We want to change the color of heading 2, and you can say the attributes right now, we use the curly brackets to specify the the attribute values, what we refer to as the declarations. So when you declare a particular style sheet, it needs to end with the semicolon, which is very, very important. So that semicolon within the color red is very, very important. So most people normally forget to add that particular semicolon. So as you can see, so that means if we specify a particular element within this particular internal style sheet, like for example, you have the heading 2 element. So that means all the occurrence of heading 2 style within this particular web page is going to get the color red. And I think you can see on the other side how it affects all the heading 2 styles, right? So we can go ahead and even bring on board another element that you want to automatically change within this particular website or web page for that matter, right? So take note of that. You can now see the difference. So for the inline option, it only changes one instance, or you have to replicate manually all the occurrences. But this one, you have to just specify the element occurrence, then automatically the style sheet is going to be replicated. So I think now at least you get that. So take home, this one you have to specify it within the header section. Always ensure that you also capture the element that you need to change, and most importantly, ensure that you follow this kind of declaration where you have to specify the element, then have the curly brackets, right? Now, there are a lot of options that you can always use. As you proceed, you're going to see how to declare this particular CSS. But let's first understand what external style sheet is. I think this is the best, and this is what I will always encourage you to try as much as possible to use. Of course, you can still use the internal style sheet, which is also not bad, right? I think this is the one that you can always use first before you can always use external style sheet. Now, again, this one now brings on board the link element, right? Now, why link? Now, why link is because now we are having separate 2 files. So you have to link the external style sheet or the CSS file together with the respective web pages. So what you need to take home here is that this kind of link or this kind of element, the link element must and should always be specified in each and every web page. So each and every web page that you create, always ensure that you have that particular link. Now, link shows the path. Like you can say the href. It shows the path to that particular or that particular CSS file that you already created. So again, you have to specify the style sheet tag or the link element within the head tag, right? So we need to have a separate CSS file here, right? So we haven't really seen it. As you can see, I think it is captured here. So the name of the style of the external style sheet is actually style.css. So ensure that you have the .css as the name of the as the extension of that particular file. For the web page, it has the extension of .html. So that means each and every occurrence of heading 2 style within the various pages that you have, if there are 10 pages, the heading 2 styles is going to change its color. So you can see how efficient the external style sheet is. So if you specify a particular element within this particular CSS file, automatically it's going to be able to change irrespective of which kind of web page you are using. So it's very, very important to ensure that you capture the right elements. So maybe looking at it from the other angle, you can see now the multiple pages. Yeah, this is what I was trying to illustrate. So you can always change all the heading to style in the different pages. So just a simple element declaration changes or with in multiple web pages, right? So you can see here we are told styles declared in an external style sheet will affect all matching elements on all the web pages that link to the style sheet. All right, so when you want to compare or maybe check maybe the features or the different features that we have within the internal and the external style sheets, we can therefore say, like for example, internal style sheets are appropriate for very small sites. Yeah. So like for example, if you are maybe less than 5-page website, you can always use internal style sheet, especially those that have a single page anyway. Might also make sense when each page of a site needs to have a completely different look. Yeah. So if you want to go to each and every page and organize it to have different look from another page, you are it's actually recommended to use the internal style sheet. Now for the external style sheet, as you have seen, better for multiple websites, right, that need to have a uniform look. Yeah, it's also good because of the it really prevents you from using multiple style sheet elements within the page, so you can use just a single page. So that one ensures that you have fast loading websites. All right. Also, designers will make changes very, very quickly, as you have seen, right? So external style sheets create the furthest separation between content and presentation. That's why we say it's very, very important to link. Yeah? So you should be able to link this particular style sheets with your respective web pages. Perfect. So let's understand the various terminologies and how we can actually come up with the declarations for our CSS. Now, if you have an instance of an element, we call it within a CSS or within a particular style sheet, we refer to that as a selector. So take note of that. So an instance of an element or HTML element within a CSS file is normally referred to what? To as a selector. Now, you can take note of the curly brackets, right? So the color, for instance, this is the attribute. Yeah. So the attributes now is within the that particular curly brackets. But this time we don't talk to it as a what? An attribute. Now, if an attribute appears within a CSS, we refer to it as a what? A property. And of course, we have the red, we refer to it as the attribute value, but when it appears within a CSS file, we refer to it as a value. Yeah. So we have selector, we have property, and we have value. So take note, we are trying to actually run away from the HTML elements a little bit, right? So you need to know. Yeah. So for the HTML elements, we talked about the HTML element itself, then we talked about the attribute, and we talked about the attribute value. So this time we are talking about the selector, property, and value. So these are the things that you are going to change within your particular CSS file, so that at least you have different changes within your web pages. So we again need to define the different properties of the selector. As you can see, we can always change the color, the font style, yeah, to italic, the text align, and the center. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think maybe I'll share with you a particular link that you can always practice these particular CSS properties, right? So there are very many, but all I need to understand is how you can always come up with their properties, right, and assign the values. Yeah. So that's just an example. We also have another example. Yeah. So the first example, all text within the paragraph elements will show in red italics that is centered on the page. Yeah, so that's what is going to happen. The other example here, you can always frame or have your CSS properties as shown. Yeah, so you can represent that. This is, I think, this is the second option is how most CSS properties, or actually the selectors and the properties and the attributes are normally displayed. So each of the property and value pairings are placed on their own indented line with a space after the colon. So you can see each and every, at the end of a value, we have a semicolon. So take note of that. Yeah. So if you don't specify those particular columns, then you'll have some issues or errors within your page. So take note of the curly brackets, take note of the property, take note of the selector, and also the value, right? So as we talk about that, some of the properties that you can always have are like the text align. So I'll share with you, and I think most of you know this particular website. I think is the W3 Consortium website, w3c.org. Yeah, you can always try to check on it, but I'll always share with it. I'll share the link so that you practice the different styles or the different or having the different properties. Yeah, some possible values are as shown. Yeah, you can always change the values as shown. So you can say you have this font style. It could be normal, italic. Yeah. So the actual list of available properties and values is quite long, but the ones listed above are the most common. Yeah, because you'll require to change maybe the alignment, the text alignment, the text color, the text for the font family size. So mostly you'll find yourself engaging with this, right? So take note of that. So how does the browser interact with the CSS? Remember, these are two processes that needs to work together, right? So browsers need a consistent way of settling these formatting conflicts in a consistent fashion. Yeah. So you realize that at no given time that maybe you'll use an external style sheet. Let me just explain it to layman. Maybe at some point you will find yourself maybe using the inline option, using maybe the internal option or the external option. So as you try to represent or integrate these different options, the cascading style sheet options within your website, they bring the cascading nature. That's where this particular cascading term came from. Yeah, so you can always use different options, yeah, so that at least you achieve the presentation of your website. But take note, there's always some conflict. Yeah, there's always some conflict when you use the three options: the inline, internal, and external. But the browser normally prioritize or it normally gives priority to internal options. Yeah, so if you have internal cascading style sheet, yeah, like for example, you are using, like for example, you are formatting heading 2, yeah, and this heading 2 maybe is replicated within internal inline. Sorry, I think inline. I'll take that one again. So when you want to format your heading 2 style, using the various cascading style sheets, that is inline, internal, and external, right? So normally the browser is going to give priority to inline, not internal. I think I had that's a wrong. So it's inline that is normally going to take the priority, right? So a web browser will process all CSS code it encounters. Yeah. For example, an external that all three will be applied. Sometimes a browser will receive conflicting, for example. Anyway, let's see what this one means. Yeah. So we use the term cascading because there is an established order of priority to resolve these conflicts, right? So this is what I was trying to explain. So inline will always be given the highest priority. Yeah, is when the internal option is applied, and of course we are going also to have the external one as the third priority. So take note of that. Yeah. So if you apply the same properties to a particular element using the different cascading style sheet, the one that is going to be given priority is the inline option, right? So if multiple conflicting styles are defined in the same style sheet, only the final one will be applied. Be careful, as this is the common mistake that most beginners of the web site designers do. All right. I don't know whether I think I was I was on mute. I don't know whether you got the last part that I was explaining. Christine, did you get the last concept? Because I think I had muted myself. I don't know. Yes?
I did not get the last part. I think I was so mute. You were on mute, so I could not.
Who heard me explaining the different CSS styles?
You are on mute. The last slide.
On the last slide, right?
Yes.
All right, let me take that again. But I think the explanation was very straightforward. Let me just take that again. I'm having challenges checking whether I'm on mute or not. All right, let me move to the last slide. Anyway, what I was trying to share, to actually demonstrate here is that we have different types of cascading style sheets, and wherever you, as a designer or developer of a particular website, you will always be expected to use maybe the three styles at a go. But wherever you apply the three styles, normally the browser tends to prioritize a given style, and the option one is inline. Yeah. So the inline style sheet is normally given the priority. Yeah. So if you have applied the different styles, let's say for example the heading 2 style is applied using the different CSS styles, the inline one is the one that is going to do what? To be applied, yeah, by default. So I think that's the part that I was trying to explain. All right, so let's take a look at some sample question here, because sometimes knowing whether people are attentive is very difficult. So let's try to check on what you have discussed so far, yeah, by refreshing refreshing our minds. So who can tell us what HTML is X or HTML stand for?
Again, go.
Who is that?
Hypertext markup language. Status.
I don't see. Where is status?
Here. Let me just raise my hands very gently.
Oh yeah. I now see you. I think. So just repeat the question. The answer again.
Hypertext markup language.
Yeah, hypertext markup language. You are correct. So what is the syntax for an XHTML comment? And the other person? Let's move very, very fast. What is the correct syntax? Yes, Arnold?
It is
Yeah, that is it. Yeah, that is the correct one. Yeah, take note of that. Yeah. What is the difference between a start tag and end tag? Yes. What's the difference? Hey, yes, no, let's have another person. Festus.
I think the answer is A.
Am I on mute again? Let me see. No, I'm not on mute. Yeah, correct. The answer is A. An end tag starts with a forward slash, right? Forward slash. So which file extension is used with standard web pages? Let me get that one. Diana. Yes? Come again, I didn't get what you said.
I say pass because in the first class here.
Wow. Does the unit requirements consider that? Anyone else? We have Faith. Let's give Faith a chance.
HTML.
Very good. That is the standard. Yeah, that's why it's always constant. Whether you have XML, HTML5. Tuendelee. What should be the first element in any web page? Yes. The other person. My friend, you need to talk. Yeah, Festus, give it a try.
Choice number C.
Yeah, actually HTML should be the very first one. So even if someone tells you to create an image within a web page, yeah, always this one needs to be there. Then from the HTML, next, which one follows? Which one follows?
Head. Head.
Yeah, head and then body. Right. So which is not a valid location for CS declarations? I think this one is straightforward. You have already looked at it right now. We didn't mention about anything, like we have mentioned inline, external, and internal, right? So what type of content can be placed into this one now? Let me get someone. Let me see whether we were attentive. Yes, Faith.
Text and links
Text and link only. I think that we need to give it a try. Any other person? Yes, Arnold.
I would say text, links, lists, and images.
Yeah, that is it. Christian, mute out. They're making noise. What will happen if we specify an image's height and width outside of its true original proportion? Kindly, if you have not answered, ensure you answer. This is how I mark my cut. So if you have not answered, ensure you give it a try. I'm waiting for response. And we need to move very fast. These are things that we looked at last time. Anyone raising their hand? Yes, there's a hand. Arnold, how comes you only have one person? Arnold?
I want to see an answer that's not listed. I think if there are other elements on the page, it will move them. I think
Yes.
it is the closest answer.
So what will happen if we specify an image's height and width outside of its true original proportion? You see, I think we discussed this one last time, yeah? We discussed this one last time. What is generally considered the best format to use for color photographs on the web? Color photos, which is the recommended? Yes, Festus.
The JPG.
.jpeg. Which of the following is not an available attribute for the image element? Yes, response? No one is answering. We don't really need that. Which image format best can support animation? No, these things should be at the tip of. Yes, please. Who else? Yes. A bookmark link starts with which symbol in the href attribute? A bookmark link. Yes, Arnold? Number? Number what? Didn't get that part. What does target do when specified in an
Oh,
number 4? Very good. So that is it. So at least we have refreshed our memory. So next time we are going to refresh our memory on the CSS. There's a chart. Okay. I really look at the chart. That's why I missed that. Yeah. So the other area, as you had mentioned, that you will most likely use the CSS is actually to alter or to change how your content looks like, right? And that's why we need to understand. Kindly mute so that you don't have a lot of interruption. So when you have the bold and italics, we can always use CSS. Yeah. So we are not going to use the normal way that you normally have the bold and the italics. Yeah. Remember we used to have like the B and the I elements, which are no longer used. We can still also use the latest kind of elements to change our content in bold to italics using the strong and the emphasis options. So these ones we are really not going to integrate them like that, but we're going to use the CSS. Yeah. So normally we represent them using such kind of like strong specifies them in bold. If you have to have the bold and the italics within the HTML5, we use the strong and the emphasis elements. Now this is a bit hard because you'll have to do this in each and every element. So we really don't need to use that. So we will use only CSS to apply the bold and the italics as shown, right? So we can always specify the tags within the style elements, as you can see. Yeah. So this is an example of inline element using or changing the bold and the italics. So we can always also represent this within the external style sheet. So take note of that wherever you are using the bold and italics tags, or you want to change them, always use the style sheets and not the individual tags in the respective elements. So let's look at the other category of CSS, or how can we understand how to use the CSS in details, right? So we normally divide the CSS tag or the CSS declaration into two using the class and the IDs, right? So this is just a way of representing or identifying the various CSS elements. Like for instance, when you use the CSS classes, most likely you are going to use it to change different elements at a go within a particular website, right? But the IDs are more or less the same, specific. Yeah, they are like the inline CSS that you're talking about. Yeah, so let's look at them. So why do we need them? Yeah, so we can recall maybe what you used to do at the previous. So with CSS classes and IDs, we have much more power in styling specific elements on the page. Yeah. So unlike the way we used to specify the various CSS in the respective examples, as you can see. So maybe as we proceed, we'll identify we'll identify the need of these classes and the IDs. Like for example, IDs are normally represented using the rel tag or the rel symbol. Yeah. So if you say, or if you have the that particular hashtag, yeah, you can always be rest assured that there's a kind of an ID specification that has been used. Yeah. So the style, class, and ID attributes are known as the global attributes. Yeah, meaning they can be assigned to nearly any, and when you say any, almost every content within the element in a specific or a respective web pages. So as you can see, we have the representation of this, which is integrated within the style element, like the headline. Yeah. So we just need to specify the ID, yeah, and have it in quotes. Yeah. So if you have that particular ID within a particular text, it is going to refer to the ID that you actually specified within the style element. Yeah. So you can also have the class. Now the class can always be used in repetitive ways to change how the specific styles are. So let's see maybe the difference between classes and IDs. When should you use it? So IDs can be applied to one, I think I'd mentioned that, and only one element in a web document. Yeah. So if you use a particular ID, you can always change if it is heading to, right? But the classes can be applied to unlimited number of elements, even different types of elements on the same page. So you can apply it on the page element, you can apply it on the body element, I mean table element, right? Those are the class. Yeah. But for the IDs, if it is the page element, you have to be specific and actually apply it to only on the page element. I don't know whether that makes sense, right? So let's see how we can use that. So example of classes, as you can see, not really captured well, but we can use multiple classes in one element. Yeah, you can use, like for example, we can have the style 1, yeah, style 2, style 3, changing different, like bold, italic, right? And even you can use both bold and italic to as a type of a class element. So this one, in a nutshell, we can use it. We can use same class, yeah, or different classes in the same element. That is within the element P, but different classes. That's an example. Let's look at another example, whereby one class is replicated in different what? Elements, and that's what we refer to as multiple elements. You can say one class, which is style 1, yeah, being used in multiple elements, like heading 1, heading 2, we have P element, also we have the list element. Yeah, so the power of class, element. So you can see on the right side how this class changes the various elements. So going forward, you'll likely use this kind of specification within your respective CSS styles. Yeah, so they give you some kind of options to apply them in different areas. Right. You can have also multiple classes just within one element. As you can see, you can specify style 1, style 2, and style 3 in one element. Yeah. Right. The good thing is that you need to capture that within the style element. Yeah. So you just need to call. Yeah. So for the programming guys, yeah, if you recall how to maybe you have stated some kind of procedure and you want to recall an instance of that particular procedure. This is the same thing. You can always use the class to recall or specify a particular style that was applied. Right? So that's a way of using multiple classes in one element. We can use both the class and ID within the same element, as you can see. Yeah. So the procedure is still the same. You just need to initiate whether it's an ID. Yeah, and ID is identified. I think maybe something that I missed here. For the class, normally you identify the class using the dot. Yeah, but for the ID, you use the what? The rail. So I think that's one of the differences that we didn't really capture, but that is what you need to do. So going forward, we are going to really use the class option mostly, just to avoid confusion. Right, but just ensure that you can always use also the ID. But in our respective assignments or class work, you will be expected to use your class elements most of the time. So a thorough understanding of how class style sheet works is very, very important. Now, the span element here allows you sometimes to specifically apply a particular or change a particular property within content. Yeah. So span allows you to specifically, like for example, you can say you can specifically change a particular color of what? Of a word within a sentence. Yeah. So if you have the span, normally you'll get that. Yeah. So you have the span and associate it with a particular class element. Yeah. So that's how the span affects how the text are applied within a particular element. So ensure that you can always use the span. So naming classes, we have said that classes, you can always use the dot. Yeah. But now, again, we should maintain the goal of keeping our content and presentation as separate as possible using the class and ID names that describe how the element appears, yeah, departs from its objective. So we should try as much as possible to use class names that describe the meaning of that particular content, yeah, not its appearance. Like don't use specific names of the, like what you have, or the description, yeah, but use this like for example the beta options are shown there, as you can see. All right. So for the classes, you identify them using the dot. For the IDs, use the rail. A point to note: class and ID names must be at least 2 characters and can contain lowercase letters, numbers, dashes, and underscores. Always start the name with a letter and not a number, right? So dot letter, not dot number. That is the good practice of using these IDs and classes. Lastly, let's see how we can come up with styles within the table. Remember, we looked at how to create the various HTML tags for the tables. So how can you again style your respective tables using the various styles or the CSS. Now, if for your information, CSS allows you to present the information or the content that you have. So understanding how you come up with CSS is very, very important. So from CSS, maybe if we are going to look at how to create a form and maybe how to associate the JavaScripts with our websites, yeah. And then now you can maybe have some kind of responsive web pages, yeah. So how do we style the different tables elements that we looked at? Remember we talked about the different table elements. So we need to be able to style them using the CSS, right? Like you can style the width of the table, right? You can style the background color of the cell within the table. The text alignment, the border, the white spaces around the cell, what we refer to as the padding, right? So that's an example of using the style, right? So you can say we are using the class style here, represented as glossary. So the width is 350 pixels. So you can see where we call it from within the table element, yeah. So that means it's going to change the entire table. Yeah, if you specify the style within the table element, it's going to change every part of the table, right? So the width of the column, everything is going to change. So take note of that where you specify your respective class elements or class styles, right? So if you want to change the width, that's how we go about it. So the column, yeah, so we can have the column width being changed. I think you are taking note of those, yeah. That's how we started by looking at the various elements. So we looked at the various elements, like this is the header. You're changing, you can specify the column header or how to change you can see the acronym and the definition has been changed. We can also do this using the percentage option, right? Now it's very, very important to use the percentage, yeah, because it offers the option of flexibility. So that means if we happen to change maybe the table width or the size of the page, automatically the various columns and rows are going to change with respect to the changes that are global, right? So that's how we can do that using the percentage. I think for some of us who have looked at the various coding, you will see that most developers use this percentage. Yeah? So you can always specify these percentages. Yeah. So also we can change the borders, yeah, using the various styles, like the border styles, the border color, border width. So again, using the same concept, yeah, we can use the border collapse property is very, very important. Now the collapse here, the collapse property allows, I don't know how to explain it, but if you resize, for instance, yeah, you are trying to resize the page of the size of the page of your website, yeah. So when it shrinks, yeah, this kind of collapse option allows it to collapse to one line, yeah. So it really allows you to view some content within that particular table up to the last line, Yeah, so as you shrink, it shrinks up to the last line. Don't know whether that one makes sense. So that is a border collapse option. You can always specify it. You can see also how we can use the border width. Yeah, border style solid, border color red, and you can specify also the respective table elements. Yeah, such as the border style here. Yeah, we have it as dashed. You can see that. Yeah, so it's a matter of understanding the various properties that I mentioned. So take note of the various properties: border style, border color, border width, and also look at the hyphen that connects them. Yeah. So it's your responsibility actually. That's why I said that I'll share the, because there are very many. I'll share the link to the WC Consortium website .org, right? You can always take a look at the various styles, properties that you can always use. All right, that's how we can customize the borders. Yeah, we also have the shorthand option. Yeah. Now, if you want to very fast specify the various without repeating various styles, we can use this shorthand way of coding. Yeah, so like for example, instead of having border width, border style, border color, we just have border, right? Then mention the width as in pixel solid red. That is it. Yeah. Now this one requires someone who has a thorough understanding of the various properties. Yeah, so I will really not recommend you to start using the shorthand before you understand how to use the long method of capturing the various styles and properties. So ensure that you be familiar with the various properties first, so that when you start using the shorthand, you can always identify that this is width, this is style, and this is actually the color that is being changed. You can also use the padding. Padding allows you to create some white space within the cell, so that your content is visible, right? So you can still use the class. I can see the class style. Now you can see as we look at the more examples or the different examples, the more we fine tune how the CSS appears. Yeah. So you can see now how we incorporate the class style here. So it's you to know if it's a class or if it's an ID style that's being used, right? Using the symbol dot. Perfect. Again, we can change the background color of a table or a cell to be specific, right? So that's how we can do it, gray color. You can also do it in the respective rows. You can change the color, background color of the rows. You can see how you go about it, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So the good thing is that if you understand the properties and the elements, you can always apply them in the respective pages, respective rows, and even the columns. Unless you have a question, I think those ones, we are going to look at more detailed CSS properties, and maybe see how we can enhance our content further. All right. Swali, any question? Now, I've shared